Welcome everybody to another live recording of the Business Travel 360 Linking the Travel Industry podcast, where we discuss travel industry news you're talking about on LinkedIn. My name is Rian and I'm one of your hosts today. I'm a co-founder at Agentivity, a travel data platform with a vision to enable travel sellers and buyers to be truly data-driven. As usual, I'm joined by Anne and Ash. Over to you, Anne.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Anne. I'm an independent consultant with LeapShift and happy to help you with anything related to distribution, NDC, one order, airline retailing. Over to you, Ash.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ash, and I'm a host of a weekly business travel podcast called What's Up in Business Travel, where we give you the important updates in under 15 minutes. Additionally, I'm the vice president at Traxo, and this is Linking the Travel Industry.
For those new to the event, we cover last week's travel industry related stories as they happened on LinkedIn. We talk about them a bit more, and as mentioned, you are more than welcome to comment on those as well. We're going to start the list of stories with not the best news. We had 3 major incidents in air traffic in the US last week. There was an incident involving a United Airlines plane with smoke coming from the galley that filled the cabin. There was a wing clip collision at Washington Reagan Airport between 2 American aircraft. And again, not the first time that has happened there in recent times. And there was a very tragic helicopter crash incident in New York where the helicopter crashed in the Hudson River with the loss of 6 lives. So terrible state of news from that part of the world. I don't know if it's happening more. I don't want to say facts that I don't know, but it certainly feels like that. Right, Anne?
Yes, it certainly does. It does feel like that. I just heard on the news this morning that the helicopter service, they are discontinuing their business.
Ash, what are your comments on these?
Well, I mean, we've had 2 helicopter incidences now in a very short period of time. So the awareness is definitely high, as you mentioned, Anne. And for me, it's a little bit closer to home, right? Simply because of the spot that it was in. And just imagine, I mean, the buildings, when you see the buildings in the background, I recognize all those buildings. Ted Christie might have been preventing some of those things from happening while he was CEO. So the stepping down piece is important. And I think that Spirit is now ready for the next phase. I know we've talked about Spirit quite a bit in the news. A lot of stuff has been said about them. A few things. One is that I think Spirit has to move into a premium cabin type of an airline. They have to introduce premium, which they've talked about doing. So that's definitely significant. And the other significance, I think, is that Spirit has to merge. I think by June, July, they're going to run out of money. And I believe Ted Christie was preventing or maybe was not the right person to lead that transition, at least the latter of the merging piece. So thoughts on that, Anne? What do you think about all that?
Absolutely. I agree with you that, it has to merge. Something has to be done. As you know, still not sure about the sort of premium cabin. I think that's something that will have to be work in progress, but definitely a merger. The CEO departing, is that the fall guy? Who knows?
Let's move on, guys. News out of the States. Furthermore, interesting. This was a very interesting post by Carmen S., who wrote about the fact that American Airlines is planning to reduce the airport service staff that they have in place at most of the airports. This is ahead of the summer travel season. It's interesting to see some of the comments in there. People are obviously on either side of the coin here, but effectively what American Airlines is saying here that you need to be prepared to do far more self-service than being serviced by an actual human, at a desk. So there were some examples, for instance, at Chicago's airport where the current customer service center is open from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. This will now be reduced to be open just before 2 p.m., I think in line with sort of the peak traffic flows, etc. So my opinion on this is that as long as there is self-servicing available and you can self-service yourself, then, hey, you should be. Of course, there is an audience which, an older type generation, which might find that difficult. So I hope they keep that in mind. Technically makes sense because it must be a huge cost to them, especially to have someone. We've all seen that, right? Seeing staff sitting at a desk where there's nobody and they're just sitting there costing money, etc. Ash, what are your thoughts on this?
For me, it's a little bit of a dual-edged sword. I agree with many of the things you mentioned. I worry about the people who don't know how to self-service and are not savvy on their phones and internet. So I think those are the ones that are going to struggle the most. The one thing I will say about American is that their mobile app is actually really, really good. A great deal. I mean, I fly them exclusively, as you know, and I do a lot of my changes and things self-service. It's intuitive. It works. It's great. But to your point, I do worry about those that are not savvy enough with that. What are your thoughts on that, Anne?
I agree with you there. It's about the people who are not savvy enough. I thought it was a bit odd in the article when it talks about the people working behind the desk for seat changes. Really? How many of those can there be? And then looking out for drug passengers. I mean, again, how many can we be looking out for? And then, of course, passengers with tons of baggage, right? There should be technical solutions to that.
As long as they don't take away the boarding pass, that's when
that's coming, Ash. You know that's coming. If the statistics show that those staff were very busy all the time, they wouldn't have been reduced. So it makes sense. Again, like we've said, we've seen those desks. Cobwebs forming in the corners, nothing happening at all. Next story is actually not a story. It's just to turn to the audience to say thank you so much for giving us your time on a Monday. Again, guys, the purpose of linking the travel industry is to link as many of us as possible. So if you would like to receive some connection requests or be willing to send out some, put your name on the screen and tell us where you are listening from, and we'll put your name up on the actual screen there as you can see it. So the owners of Mesa Airlines and Republic Airways are in talks to merge. That will mean the merging of those two airlines. It's an all-stock deal. Is this expected, Ash? And what's the significance of this?
From a regional jet perspective, there is definitely a lot of players in the market. So to me, that's not a surprise. I think that we might see one more or two more mergers. I mean, when you look at the four major U.S. airlines that have regional service, Alaska, American, Delta, and United, you see a lot of use of multiple regional airlines. And one of the things I've noticed actually, Rian and Anne, is that the regionals in the North American market are flying longer flights now than they have ever. Dallas to Chicago, that's not considered a regional flight, but it's supported by a regional jet. So we'll see how this goes.
And any comments on this potential merger?
It makes much more sense. And I totally agree. Every time when I fly in the US, it's always Republic Airways, right? It really, truly makes a lot of sense to have more mergers and more capability and capacity.
So there was a strike last week by Greek air traffic controllers. It did cause substantial flight cancellations in the area. Ash, did that screw up your plans for your trip to Athens?
When this first story came out, I was like, okay, they're going to go on strike, big deal. Like, there's much more serious situations to deal with. And then I was surprised at the number of cancellations, actually. It didn't match with what I thought was going to be the reality.
Okay.
You don't think Greek air traffic controllers are really managing that much, but apparently they are a little bit.
Apparently they are. And then very interesting development, the possibility of direct flights between India and China resuming, because there were direct flights before COVID and it stopped as a result. But that has accelerated and those discussions are going forwards and we will see these apparently quite soon. Interesting timing on this as well with regards to the world politics going on. I was surprised to hear that the flights have not yet continued. Myself, I thought that would be the case. Surely there's a lot of traffic between those two countries. And again, or am I wrong, right? There must be plenty of demand here.
There must be plenty of demand. And I was also surprised because I thought that the flights had resumed. Because, we're talking about the two biggest countries in the world, right? And there has to be a lot of demand.
And then one interesting story that popped up on my feed was about Virgin Australia doing a refund for up to 60,000 customers that they've identified that had an erroneous or error transaction happening, or there was an error calculation happening in their online flight booking process. And they've acknowledged that up front and they've raised their hand and said, we made a mistake. And they will be refunding up to 60,000 customers. Great to see, right, Anne, that they've recognized the mistake, put their hand up and said, we'll refund.
I wonder how that came about and how it was discovered. That actually makes me think of there should be more auditing processes, right, in this industry to ensure that this is correct. Because let's face it, the refunds, and don't get me started on reissues, it's so archaic. So I guess they must have been caught out, but it's a good thing that they refund. Absolutely.
Any thoughts, Josh?
I think that they got ahead of the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission and saved themselves millions of dollars in fines. So that was their motivation, right? Before we get fined $10 million by the ACCC, let's just refund the money and be done with. Cost me a lot less.
That's right. think those were the stories on my list. I'm sure we have an extra story or two. I don't have an extra story, but Anne, do you have one or two?
A story sort of breaking very recently about the end of check-in for Amadeus and their new vision for the future. It's a pretty interesting article.
Not just the boarding pass is going, but also the online check-in, right? It's all just gone. You just go to the airport and hope you get a flight, right? Is that it?
Actually, what's fascinating in this article is that they start talking, they're calling it DMS, OMS, right? Or order management systems, right? And here we have the sort of DCS management system, they're calling it, which I find fascinating. DMS, they call it.
DMS.
Now.
What does that stand for?
DMS. So OMS and DMS, right? It gets more interesting every week, doesn't it?
What does the DMS stand for?
It stands for Delivery Management System, right? DCS is Delivery Control System.
Okay.
And now it's DMS, Delivery Management Systems. And something else that caught my eye during the week was a couple of articles by Martin. I can never pronounce his surname.
His real name is Martijn van der Voort, and I know he's listening, so thank you, Martijn, but he's okay with being called Martin.
He did a great post that I will add as well on innovation washing, because here we go. A company pretending to have AI capabilities, and it turns out to be a bunch of people in the Philippines. I found that absolutely fascinating. It's all over the place.
That was a fascinating story, really.
How does that work?
So they pitched that their app is AI driven, but behind the scenes there's a bunch of people having to respond very quickly and respond.
Yes, very quickly.
Yes.
They should make them travel agents. I mean, those people must be pretty damn good at that.
I mean, you can't, when you read that, you're thinking, you can't make this stuff up. But obviously,
what was the benefit there for the company to claim? Is it just about like what it's called? It's an innovation boast that they have this. Maybe they had some tech grant or something. I don't know. What was the...
I don't know either, but I was cracking up at that. And then thank you, Martin, for posting about this. Another one of horrible sort of greenwashing. He made a post about this horrible eco village in Sweden, where I think I've mentioned it to you before, of these owners who there was nothing eco about it at all, except for lots of BS on TikTok, etc. And they dumped lots of sewage and stuff in the woods, and they've now set up a new business after scamming thousands of customers, and set up new business in Guatemala instead of west coast of Sweden. I'll add that story to our post as well. Cool. Fascinating.
Innovation washing, greenwashing. There we go.
Yes, there's a lot of washing, isn't there?
Indeed. We've got about 50 seconds left. Ash, extra stories from your side?
Air India Express, they're actually going in the opposite direction of the North American market that's shifting to premium cabin seats. Air India Express is eliminating premium cabin seats in their aircrafts and plans to do that by April of next year. This is not a retraction of their direction. This is more of a, let's get more efficient. They bought a bunch of new planes, and so they're looking to differentiate themselves in that way, which is quite interesting, right? And just to put it in perspective, I mean, they carried 30 million passengers, and they're planning to double that. So one of the big things about international travel is that you come to the US, you got to recheck your bag. So American Airlines is testing out the elimination of bag recheck. I think that will save a lot of people time and a lot of issues that people deal with. I mean, you got to leave, get your bag, go back, check it in, and then go through TSA security again. So this makes that process a lot easier for incoming.
I think taking all your favorite things out of travel, like Rachel was saying there, so no online check-in, no boarding pass, no bag checking.
I just have to spend more time at the lounge now.
Yes.
Like, what am I going to do?
Yes, indeed. Okay, guys.
I think they're pushing us in that direction of the lounge.
You can see that Rachel clearly agrees with you on the boarding pass.
I'm telling you, there's many of us. It's not just Rachel and I. The whole world, I think, is looking for their boarding passes.
The whole world minus Anne.
And by the way, watch, one airline is going to start charging for it, and people are going to be willing to pay, and then it's going to be an avalanche from there.
You mean Asher's willing to pay for it?
$5 for boarding pass. I'll pay it.
Okay, I went to an event in Istanbul this weekend, and I took the event ticket and added it to my Google Wallet, and there it was, and I could just show it at the door, and I went. So, I was happy. Didn't need their piece of paper for it. So if I could do the same with boarding passes, I'd love it. There we go.
I do the same with boarding passes. I always have them mobile.
I think that is a wrap for this week. Thank you very much. We do this weekly, as Ash will remind you at the end. But thank you so much for your time and your comments. We appreciate that. And Anne and Ash, thank you to you. Over to you, Anne.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much for your comments. Over to Ash.
Thank you all for joining today's live recording of Linking the Travel Industry. We record this podcast live every week on Monday, and we ask that you share this event with others that you know. Chances are high that if you enjoy today's session, those that you know will as well. If you ever miss a show because of time zone or availability, we make the podcast available on businesstravel360.com. This is Linking the Travel Industry, signing off.